that was kind of the culmination of everything I'd trained for my whole life. And I was, as hard as it was to lose someone, I was also proud that we had gotten out of it together as a team, because we were in that valley for about 12 hours. It was a tough day.
Good as Gold's, the official Gold's Gym Australia podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Good as Gold podcast. Today, we welcome back an old friend, Mark Wales.
We chat about his mental and physical journey getting into the SAS, the hardships of deployment, and how he was able to return into a normal everyday life.
Yeah, definitely tune into this one. It's going to be a good one.
Welcome in, Mark Wales.
Mark Wales, it is so good to have you back on the podcast. Very excited to talk to you today.
Yes. Thank you.
Great to see you guys. How you doing?
We're doing great around here.
Very well.
We're actually looking at Mark, and he is in like his own little bunker, and it is honestly a sight to see. It's amazing.
It's moody. And we're looking at a beautiful
I
brick
definitely
wall.
need like some sort of gun rack going in here. I feel like.
Yeah, no.
The gun safe is under somewhere, I'm sure. Surely. Now, you are back. We've spoken to you before. We spoke all things Survivor, World's Toughest Race. Today we want to, I say, dive deep.
We're deep diving. We're getting into it. We're talking all things physical, mental, SAS style, everything that we have to chat to you about the SAS, which is super exciting. I'm feeling good. Mark, how are you feeling? You ready to deep dive in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to know about this stuff, and I think that, you know, if there's a kid out there that's 13 like I was and they can get something from it, then great.
Well, and it definitely deserves its own episode because,
Yes.
you know, there's just so much to unpack. So you're saying you started at 13 years old going, this is something that I want to do. Tell us about this. Did it start from younger age?
Even younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, even younger. I was like grade 9, and one day in school, someone showed me a magazine that had pictures of the British SAS rescuing hostages in London during a siege. And I was like, holy shit, that's what I want to do. And so I did some research and found out that Australia had our own SAS unit. And I was like, how do I get in there? And found out you have to go through the army. And that's when I said, well, I better go join the army.
At
And
what
I
age
was only
were you?
young. I was like grade 9, so maybe 12, 13 years old.
Wow.
Not
What
real.
exactly-
Yeah.
What exactly is the SAS? Can you please explain exactly what the difference is?
Yeah. So the SAS stands for the Special Air Service Regiment. It's a special forces unit or a special operations unit. Basically, it just means they do jobs that are beyond the range and capability of conventional forces. So they do the harder jobs.
Yeah.
They're generally better equipped, they're better trained, and you generally use them for strategic jobs that are kind of high risk, high reward. So it might be like hostage recovery, like in a really dangerous place, or maybe you go and want to capture someone who's, you know, has bad intentions for your country, or you might need some special reconnaissance done. So those units do that. The SAS is one of those units. There's a few others. There's the commandos. There's the special ops engineering regiments. There's quite a bunch of them under one kind of house.
Yeah.
And the SAS has a really storied history. They're known as one of the best units, and they were at war in Afghanistan. We were at war in Afghanistan for nearly 12 years, I guess.
Yeah.
What does the training, I guess, look like? You said before, you got to go through the army to get into like what's the timeline to get to where you were, or if someone was to do it, how long would it take to get to that point?
Yeah, I think, and when I joined, I think they were looking for people to have spent about 2 years in the military in any branch, whether it's Navy or reserves or whatever. So a couple of years in, then you can apply to go to SAS selection, and they vet you. So they put you through psychological tests and they check your history and all these things. And if you're suitable, you can then be approved to go on the selection course. And that takes it's a 3-week course. And it's where you're put through your paces by staff from the SAS, and they decide that if you've got the attributes to undergo further training as an SAS soldier.
Yeah.
So it starts You've got 3 weeks to kind of prove yourself. So run us through those weeks. What actually is involved in this process?
So they get all the candidates at the start. They call you candidates, and you've got a number printed on your arm.
What was your
And
number?
87, candidate 87.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I was like, I know you will know this straight up.
Oh, I'll never forget that number.
Yeah,
Never
exactly.
forget, yeah.
And yeah, they basically grabbed us. They put us all in an aircraft hangar. We had to strip down, totally naked.
Wow.
And I've never been subjected to that. That's not something the military does.
Yep.
And so straight away, I was like, these people have full control over us.
Yeah.
And then they start. It's like that psychological shock of like, no, you're playing under our rules now, and if you want to stay here, then no one shouted, no one even raised their voice at us. They just spoke normally, and it's actually very intimidating when people are fully in control of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they put you through. They push through a lot of heavy tests. So at the start, there's a bunch of physical tests you have to do. So 20K time march, 10K run in body armor, 3.2K run.
Mm-hmm.
All these tests that basically are correlated to success in, pass-fail result in the selection course.
Yeah.
And so those early tests are a good way to kind of weed people out that aren't going to be suitable.
Yeah.
And I think they give you the chance to retest, but when we did it, we just got crunched through these tests. And if you pass that, there's an endurance phase where you're on your own for 5 days trying to march around, navigate, and you're totally on your own, so you've got no feedback of any kind.
Wow.
There's an officer module where for about 72 hours they really push you through your paces without sleep.
Oh,
and then
my
the final
God.
week is like a teamwork activity where you do missions that are pretty impossible, but you don't get any food, you don't get any sleep, and
No.
you've got to work together to achieve these missions. Yeah, it's just you're already shattered, and it's just an exercise in self-control and willpower and self-discipline. It's not a physical activity. I think that's a common mistake people make, and I certainly made. I thought this is going to be mostly physical,
Yep.
Mhm.
but the body will only go as far as the mind kind of lets it.
Yeah.
And so that was the big revelation, is that this is almost entirely a mental activity.
Quite quickly, you probably would have started, 3 weeks earlier with a completely different mindset. Where was
Yeah.
your mindset straight after that? Were you ready?
I think after that, I was really grateful to have gotten through, and they said, you're suitable to start the training. You do a further,
Yeah.
year and a half worth of training. That's all your specialist skills that you get. And you can still be kicked off at any point by then.
Yeah.
I think only about 15 or 20% normally get through that first gate.
Yeah.
And then you lose more people during the next 18 months. So you're always working hard, and you're always afraid of getting kicked off. But the skills you learn are really top notch. It's led by high quality people.
And at any point where you're like, what have I just signed up for? Like, I've done the army.
Oh,
I saw that picture and I want to be people rescuing. And then you're like, what have I, Mark, think about it. What have I done?
there are a couple of points where I'm like, I'm in over my head here.
Yeah.
There was one where they had us out doing push-up drills on a fast rope in gravel for about 3 hours, and would have been 30 degrees, and there were ambulances parked on the
Oh my God.
in the train. Yeah, there were
Just
ambulances
ready.
parked there before we even got there.
Yeah.
So when you're walking down, you see ambulances parked where you're about to do training. You know it's going to be serious.
Yeah.
And it was just brutal. It was brutal. Yeah, I could only do it as a young man. I think I was 24 when I did it, and I don't think I could do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure would test you. So with the mental actual training component, can you give us a backstory or a bit of an insight into, are they teaching you anything to kind of, I guess, involved with the mental side of it?
They're not teaching you on the course. Like it's the attributes they're already looking for in you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a training course, and they make that clear. They go, this isn't a training course. There's no course outcomes. This is you're either suitable or you're not. That's
Yeah.
what this 3 weeks decides.
Yep.
And you're like, holy shit. But I did get some insights. I went back as an instructor about the kind of qualities they're looking for in people.
Yeah.
And they have like there were like 7 or 8 when I saw it, and they had very clear descriptors of what each one meant, like what it would look like and what you would see. And so when I went back as an instructor, it became a bit clearer to me what they're looking for in people.
Yeah.
And it's a very good process for picking people that have those qualities and ones that don't.
Do you think it's something that, I mean, again, not like we need to refine the SAS course, but obviously it's very physical. Do you think if there was some sort of mental aspect, you would see better mental health across the Special Forces Board, or even just the Army in general, if they did offer some sort of, like you said, they're looking for the attributes that you've already got.
Yeah, they need someone to be strong, right?
Yeah, the psychologists that are there on the course, they have them, they actually test for certain attributes, including resilience to trauma, agitation, which funnily enough, they were looking for in high levels. They want people who have high agitation levels because you're more likely to be up on your feet doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
So it's super interesting the kind of spikes they look for in personalities.
Can you
they do select people.
Can you explain a few of them tests? You know,
I spoke to an SF psych years ago, and I remember him saying that, and I think it was probably not information they were meant to share with me, but it's it's probably completely changed now. But they were looking for those attributes, like does this person have the self-discipline to operate in a team and control their emotions? Do they have higher levels of agitation, so they want to keep doing things all the time? What else? There would have been levels of introversion and optimism that they were looking for. And I can't speak to what they're looking for, but it was clear they do select for different psych profiles as well. And I think some of that relates to, resilience to trauma.
Yeah. What's some advice that you would give to someone who is, 13-year-old, even a 20-year-old that's looking to kind of get into the Army, looking to go into that Special Forces? Like, what are some tips that you can give to people that are wanting to join?
The big tip would be like start thinking about it now and start training yourself for it now. So make those small uncomfortable changes that I was speaking about last time, and continually grow yourself as you go through the military. Try and do the things that you're going to have to do on selection. Navigation, leading teams, giving orders, things like that. You need to train in those things because that's within your control. The rest is character-based, and that's kind of a product of your upbringing, so there's not much you can do about that.
Yeah.
But really work on the things that you can help. And then when you're on the course, don't give up because you don't even have to be the best soldier there. But if you're standing at the end, your chances of getting in are dramatically higher. If you give up, you're not getting in.
Was there that point that
that's
you
the
kind
hardest
of,
bit?
Yeah. Was there a point that you were kind of like, I can't do this anymore? Or was there never a doubt in your mind? You were like, I'm going to go through this, no doubt.
I kind of I said before I went on, the only way I'm leaving is if I'm on a stretcher or a wheelchair. That's the only way I'm leaving, right? But I almost got to that point. I had a really bad knee injury I'd done on day 3, and it got kind of worse and worse over that following week. And I had bad blisters on my other foot. So every step I was taking was just really severe pain. I didn't give up. I stuck it out, and the injury started to heal.
Yeah.
And that was the surprising thing, is I actually didn't get worse. I got better. And because I stuck at it, my injury started to heal and I came out of it.
Yeah, that was where my question was going. Is you're in the pressure cooker, of course. What was the harder part of it? Was it the physical aspect or the mental aspect of it all?
Well, I'd say within a couple of days, the physical part doesn't matter that much anymore. It's kind of a level playing field. Doesn't matter how fit you are or how strong you are. Everyone's in the same level of disrepair.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, it's whether you want to be there. It's how hard you want to work to do it. It's how much you're willing to put yourself through to get to the end.
Yep.
And so I say it to people now, I'm like, it's literally 90% mental and the other 10% is all in your head.
Yep.
Yeah, wow. So let's, I guess, talk about you actually getting into the SAS. How many people are, or how many in your team in the SAS? Is it a large team?
Oh, the unit itself, I don't think is that big. When I was there, it was, roughly 4 or 5 squadrons. So maybe there was a couple of hundred guys there. There weren't that many
Yeah.
at all. And then there's a big support element. So there's hundreds of other soldiers
Yeah.
that do comms and logistics and everything else. So it's not a big unit.
What were you actually thinking when you were part of the team? What went through your head?
Oh, it was just like, I was excited because it was a dream I'd had since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But there was also, this is such an important job. There's some really experienced guys here that I really look up to, and I wanted to, work hard and do the right thing.
Yeah.
And so I was just really thrilled to be there. I was really thrilled. And we were starting to deploy more to the Middle East and East Timor. So
Yeah.
it was an exciting time. It was really cool.
That's I was going to ask, what do you like? Could you recall your first mission? Like you get on the plane, you're flying out, like nervous, excited. Run me through.
Oh yeah,
Mm.
yeah. One of the first ones I did was I headed straight into Afghanistan for a security detachment. We were taking a general in there, and we flew in on a military aircraft, kind of over the mountains of Afghanistan, and we landed at the base in Tarin Kowt. It was just a dirt airstrip, and I remember landing on a dirt airstrip and just going, "Oh, this is like the Wild West. There is nothing out here." And when I got out of the plane, I remember seeing the mountains and the haze in the sky, and you could look directly at the sun because of the amount of dust
Oh my
there
God.
was. And I was just like, "This is a different world."
Yeah.
It was like landing on Tatooine in a Star Wars film. It was totally.
It's like actually
Totally
didn't
different.
even think it was a real place,
Yeah.
you know? Wow.
Yeah, but it was exciting, right? It's like a different world. It was
And
cool.
what age were you when you did your first deployment?
About 26.
Wow.
It's like to
That's
think,
27.
because that's my age now. Like to think that I just could never put myself in your shoes, Mark. And it's just like honestly incredible to see you here being able to talk to us and explain to us, like, I guess the battles that you've had. It's definitely something else. How many missions did you go on from start to finish?
I did a lot of missions, but I count them in tours. So I did 10 tours. I did about 3 to East Timor. So my first one, I was actually only a baby when I went there. I was 21.
No, oh my
I went there
God.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I was a baby. Yeah, I just graduated from officer training and took a platoon over to East Timor for 7 months. I was really young. And September 11 had just happened at the start of
Wow.
that. So we knew kind of there was going to be a different world.
Yeah.
But we're in East Timor, and I did 2 more trips after that with the SAS. We were doing like a recovery mission. There was a guy we were trying to arrest over there, and I was actually a bodyguard to the president, Shanana Guzmao. I was with him for about 6 months.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And
Make a movie,
yeah, it
please.
was cool. It was
The
super cool.
bodyguard himself.
You actually need, your own documentary, Mark. I've just decided. Can we?
It sounds really glamorous, but it is like punishing
Yeah,
work.
of course. I'm sure.
No, it was fun. It was good. And then I did 4 tours in Afghanistan. I went back and forth to Iraq quite a bit, but wasn't involved in combat there. I was kind of escorting visitors around.
Yeah.
And I did one to Lebanon. That was really good. And one to the Solomon Islands. So I spent a lot of time, my 20s, just going between these places.
And during that time, were you having to deal with, were you just living your life and loving it and being like, this is what Mark Wales was born to do? Or were you also being like, holy shit, like I'm in deep and I'm not dealing and I'm seeing, because like you said, Tatooine, I love Star Wars, but I can imagine that's like a fun place. I go to the bar,
Exactly.
hang out with some droids. You're not doing,
Yeah, you do make it sound fun, Mark.
but it's a war zone,
It
right?
was fun. It was fun. And the bad parts that I raised before, they were hard, but that was not a big proportion of it. There were those kind of rare stretches where something really bad would
Yep.
happen,
Yeah.
or there were accidents and guys were killed, and that wasn't it wasn't that common over the 6 years I was there. It happened probably once a year, but I kind of remembered it. They're the parts that stick out, but there were a lot of really good fun parts, and a couple of times I was in the you walk into the Star Wars bar. Like I walk into a bar in Kabul, and there's like spy over there, CIA guy there, Afghan there. Good looking diplomat just there. It was really good fun. It was really good fun.
So I want to, we touched briefly on this in the first episode that you joined us on, but I want to talk about that mental aspect of it because obviously, like you said, you are seeing people dying, and you are, like you said, in that previous episode that like you had to do things that you didn't want to do that might have been against your values and beliefs. How do you push past that? Like, how do you get through that?
I think the reason we get through it is because it's just us and our team, and we know that to survive in an environment like that, you really have to be hard on people, and that means having to shoot back at people, having to shoot before they shoot you, having to use other force against them, whether it's aircraft or vehicles or artillery. Like it's pretty rough. Like those machines are designed for war fighting, and it feels very rough to use that against people. But if you don't do it, it's going to be you. So it's kind of it's one of those really hard things you've just got to do. And I think that I didn't rationalize until I left. Yep. It's like, it was clear what we had to do when we're there. Like, we've got to survive. We've got to do this. And later on, you then kind of connect the dots and try and come to terms with it.
Because, would you say you were constantly, like, you would go over for deployment and you're on a mission, but for those 7 months, you're always on the mission. Like, we work 9 till 5, say, and we go home and we're done, and we then turn off the work mode.
Yeah, you were always on.
I don't know what it's like. If I was at work all the time, 24/7, I would not be sane. So for you to have to do the same thing, just in that mindset of, like you said, not necessarily kill or be killed, but like you were saying, you have to be on all the time.
Yeah, it was continuous. We kind of rarely had time off, but it's also exciting as well. Like, you're living many lives kind of packed into that one deployment. So it is, even though it's hard, it was really rewarding on a lot of different levels, and it was what I wanted to do.
Exactly.
So I was happy to do it.
What was the biggest thing that you learnt every time you would get deployed? Like, what's the biggest thing you learnt from every deployment, every tour?
Probably every time I thought I was getting better, I would be shown an area where I wasn't as good as I could have been. And I'm like, you've got work to do. You've always got more to do. And the minute you get comfortable is the minute you start to become obsolete. And so I think that continuous growth kind of mindset is something I got kind of bred into me at a young age.
Would you say that you use that, I guess, moving forward, not in that old lifestyle now, in your current life that you're living, would you live by that as well?
Yeah, because that kind of focus has meant I'm more willing to tackle things that I would not have done otherwise, things that might have a bit of risk attached to them or might be hard, or I might have no experience in it. I'm much more willing to look at it kind of with a beginner's eyes and just go, this is doable. I've just got to kind of train myself and then stick at it. Even like writing a book was an example. I had to learn storytelling and writing and 3-act structure and the business of publishing. Like, I just went and learned that stuff because I was interested in it. But it's been helpful in that sense, is I don't mind getting my hands dirty in a field I have no experience in.
Yeah, so you'd almost like look at it as like you have a task at hand. You're going to not necessarily visualize it, but see what you need to work on, or even reassess a situation and be like, I should have done this better. I could have done it. And you will then put that in the next biggest thing. And I mean, you've done bloody everything. You're an action hero / editor / businessman.
Like, actually, you've done it all. And this is just incredible. Did you find it really hard to be away from your friends and family when you were on tour?
Yeah, it was hard. Like, I knew they were worried about me. I knew they knew I was kind of in danger. And in that sense, it is a bit selfish because you are, I kind of underappreciated the impact it has on other people. They'd have sleepless nights. They didn't know what I was doing. And that's hard. And I've said to them later, I'm like, I put you through a lot, and I'm glad I'm still here and that it all worked out. Yeah.
Wow. What did you struggle coming home, like, to try and fit back into normal everyday life? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but, in movies, you're seeing people that have come back home and they, they're getting triggered by every loud noise. They're getting triggered by things. Was that you, or were you not necessarily like that?
Yeah, you have a lot of trouble fitting in because you've been living in another environment altogether. And they kind of capture that a bit more now with modern films. They're like, these people come home, but they're not fully stable. Yeah. And that's how I felt. I'm like, I'm not really fit to be in society at the moment because you've trained me to go off and fight and commit these violent acts, but I haven't yet reintegrated myself mentally back into society. So it's really, I don't know, dislocating, I guess, when you come home and you're just another person again.
Yeah, and that's it. Did you struggle to think like, because I have been, I guess I've just completely like stuffed my sentence up, which is so fabulous.
I have a question if I can if I can interject.
Please do.
It's funny. I was about to, and then Em got in. No,
Sorry.
but I was going to ask, like, were you self-aware that was the case? Like when you came home, you're like, I don't fit in anymore, or was it like another foreign place? You were back on Tatooine, but in your own society that you were almost used to prior to that.
A bit of both. I knew I wasn't 100%, ready to reintegrate, but I'd come home and my mind was, I would be home, but I wasn't present.
Yeah,
right? My mind was always back in Afghanistan because my friends were over there.
Exactly.
At one, everyone I worked with that I really liked was over there. At one point, I had a girlfriend over there. I met a diplomat from the UK. Yeah, it was kind of weird. My whole life was over there, so I'd come home, pay my bills, and then I'd just be waiting to go back.
Wow, that's like what I was going to say before is like, did you find that you were like, no one even knows who I am, but I'm over here like fighting for everyone's freedom. Yeah, exactly. Did you ever get to that point?
Yeah, but also I kind of realised that what we were doing wasn't related to Australia's interests to the point where people would pay attention to it. So I'm like, we're over here fighting our ass off, but it has no impact on what's happening back home. So are we really in the right war here? And so that's kind of what I wasn't angry at people for it. They just weren't being told about it. Journalists weren't being told. The military was presenting, frankly, just a bullshit confected story about what they wanted Afghanistan to be, which was us putting girls in school and handing out candy, when in reality we were running basically search and destroy combat missions in remote valleys. Wow. It was severe. It was really tough fighting, and that just was never communicated to the Australian people.
Yep.
I guess
I say search and destroy; they were actually kill capture missions. And that's a very hard thing to ask people to do, especially in a war of arguably little consequence.
I guess the media really do paint a picture that's completely different, and that's why we hear it all the time. It's like, who do we believe? We're hearing this media source, we're hearing on the news, and you're telling us a completely different story. It must be frustrating for you.
Yeah.
Well, the frustrating bit is the people in the military really don't get much of a voice because they're not allowed to say things publicly, and even people like me that are former special forces are discouraged from
talking,
speaking in the media or talking. And I'm like, no, I'm a civilian. I'll say, frankly, I'll say whatever I want.
I love that about you, though.
That's run and gun.
Honestly, yeah, and I'm past caring about it as long as I'm, keep it facts based and there's got to be a point to it. And for me, it's about sharing the story and also trying to help people in their own struggle.
But it is fine. It is very sugar coated without getting too political about it. But what I was keen to know, I just had a thought, was the same sort of like things that got you through when you were back home. Like when you're back home in Australia, you're like, I can't wait to get over there because my friends are over there. I'm excited to go back. Your girlfriend, are they the same things when you're back on deployment? Are they the same things that get you through each day to be like, I am keen to go back home and see my family and see my friends in Australia? Were they similar things that help you get through or vastly different depending on the mission at hand?
They were kind of different. And sometimes I would try not to think about home because that would remind you what you had to lose.
Yep.
I remember one kind of weird thing. We were at the end of my first tour and we'd been in heavy combat in one area in Afghanistan. We'd been out for 2 weeks and it was probably one of the hairier kind of missions I'd had. And there was a GQ magazine in our car and it had the cover image was Senator Barack Obama, going for the election in 2008. And I remember seeing it, and I just like, I'm not even going to look at that magazine or look through it for anything that reminds me of the West, because I've just got to finish this and get home, and I don't want to jinx myself. So I wanted to almost deny that my home existed until I'd survived that battle.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's the thing, right? I wanted to touch on, you're suffering through depression. What other kind of mental illness did you have, and how do you, how did you get yourself through that? How did you get yourself to a point where you're like, I'm okay? And some days I know are probably shit still, but how do you get through that?
I think for me, probably the hardest step was initially just realizing there was a problem that I needed help with. I think some people will try and deny that. It's like, if I don't admit to anything, then nothing's wrong and I'll be fine.
Totally. But that's what everyone does, regardless of your circumstance, Mark. Like, your circumstance is something like none of us will ever experience in our lifetime. But that's why you're so relatable. You're like, no matter if I'm over here fighting or if you're just having, another situation happen to you, it's all relative.
Yeah, it is relative. And the same issues that a soldier faces from warfighting can be the exact same response people get from repeated burnout and an exposure to trauma at home, a car accident or an assault or something like that. So there are strong parallels between what a soldier will go through and what anyone else can go through in their life. And so that first step of kind of recognizing something was wrong, that was important. And then saying, well, I've now got to pay attention to myself. I've been working for other people and supporting a team, and now I've actually got to invest in myself a bit. Otherwise, I'm going to have a shit quality of life. And there won't be a job. I'll be, in a mental asylum or I'll be, have a mental breakdown. So I think it was that recognition of you've now got to invest in yourself a bit and take the time to repair yourself.
What advice do you have for someone who is wanting to invest in their mental health? Is it go see a psychologist? Is it a variety of things?
Mine is like, always try and base your activities around proven techniques and scientifically proven. Don't listen to gurus. Don't just do your homework, find out what's been proven to work,
the facts.
through extensive research and adopt those. And don't listen to the influences and anyone else. Just listen to the facts, find out what the facts are. And
I like that.
That's the best steer. Yeah, because people invest their hope in people that just don't know what they're talking about.
And that's the saddest part.
Yeah.
They're desperate.
Well,
they're desperate for
misinformation
answers.
again. And it kind of can make the part work, because they're like, they told me to chant I am free 5 times a day and I'm still not free,
If I just manifest my wellness, it'll come. It won't come. It won't come at all, because it's bullshit, a lot of it. And so I would say to people that might run into any trouble with mental illness or just health, like, go to a professional from that field, whether it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a GP. Just go and speak to them and have them get you started on the right path.
I love that. That's sound advice. And not trying to skim over too much, but in the last episode we learned how you lived the college frat life, going to business school directly after finishing up deployment, and then have you penned that in the book, or does your book?
Yeah, let's chat book.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book, Mark. It's called Survivor. What exactly is in this book?
Oh, so yeah, I'd always wanted to write about my experiences overseas. I just wasn't sure kind of when to do it and how to tackle it. And I almost had a go at it in 2017 after I kind of left, after I left New York. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. I think because we knew we were going to have Harry, our little boy, and I was like, I'll just put that on the back burner for now. And I'm really glad I did, because that extra time of just having a family and being a father and a parent, and I guess getting more of an understanding of what it's like to have a kid who could one day go off and fight, like that kind of, it just, I guess, rounded me just a little bit more. And I eventually decided I wanted to write when at the end of 2019, I actually put a proposal forward to a publishing company and just said, I want to do a military memoir, but I want to add some more layers in there about the human experience of war fighting, because I felt like that wasn't always covered in some memoirs. And the publisher said yes, and I started writing the manuscript during the lockdown in early 2020. Yep. And then it was published, I think, May this year. So
congratulations!
About 3 or 4 months.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really happy I did the work.
Emily and I picked ourselves up a copy, and I can't wait. I read the a good little synopsis of it, and
he's been caught out. Basically, he hasn't read the whole thing.
I haven't read the whole thing, 100%. I said
there'll be a test. There'll be a test at the end.
Yes, exactly. Page 54. What did Mark say?
I'm a visual guy. I saw the pictures in the middle, and I flicked through, and I painted a nice little picture. But there was a story in there. You don't obviously have to go too far into it, but it was pretty like.
Oh, hey, I also narrated the audiobook. So if you don't want to read,
and listen to the
voice.
The
audiobook.
Audiobook I'm listening to.
That.
I'll listen on the way home.
Perfect.
And then I'll tell you. You can test me later. But there's a story in there. I mean, I'm sure there's many stories in there, but were there any that were like hard to talk about, or even just reliving? Obviously, rewriting things, you almost can.
You have to go back.
It's like trauma reenactment, right? And I there's a story in there about where it sounded pretty wild on the old battlefield. Can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah. There were parts when I was thinking about, what do you include? Because you can't put everything in there, right? You've really got to be selective about what you put in. There was one point where I realized, I'm actually going to have to talk about all the things that I'm not proud of, that I didn't do well, that I kind of failed at. Because if I don't show you that, I'm not going to be a relatable protagonist. You're not going to see the stumbles that come along the road on a path like this, and there are so many of them. And I don't know why people. Well, I do know why people try and hide them, because it's embarrassing, right?
Exactly.
But but I thought if I don't put this in there, it's going to be a less complete picture of me. And I hated it because I'm like, I want to forget all that shit. But once I put these stories in there of all the things that I screwed up, going back as far as when I was a kid and all the way through my career, I think they're the things that people talk to me about the most. They're like, I love this because, I experienced something similar, or I really laughed at this. And it makes the good things better, because then you're like, well, if he did that bad and he's saying he did this well, then I can believe him.
Yeah.
And I think that just made it a more rounded book.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that's more interesting than any book that's just talking about the good shit you did. You have to fail in order to succeed. So,
and even being relatable, like we both don't know what it's like. The closest thing I've got to that is playing Call of Duty. So I have no idea, but being relatable to the sense of like, holy shit, like you went through some hard, crazy stuff. You're still here. You're still talking about you being vulnerable, and we can relate to it ultimately.
Mm.
Yeah, and as long as there's a point to it, then it's that vulnerability will help. And in my case, it's just, I went through all this, still had troubles, and you know what, you can get through the other side with some hard work.
Mark, I want to know, what was the hardest thing on when you have been on tour? What was the hardest thing that you've had to endure?
Oh, definitely seeing my own guys killed or wounded.
Yeah.
I think there were 2 occasions. There was one occasion where someone was killed. One of my team leaders was killed. And another occasion where there were 3 guys that were pretty badly injured in a roadside bomb explosion. Yeah. And just the stress of that. Like, it's one thing to see suffering to some level, but when it's people you know and love, it's very, very hard to take. Just it stays with you. It really has always stayed with me.
Absolutely. And that's it. It's probably not something that you're going to forget, but how do you, every single day, if something, that you are going through that you have been through before, how do you push past that? Or how, what are some tactics that you use every single day when something shitty pops up in your mind? How do you work through that?
One is that I think about your experiences are going to be kind of normally distributed. So you're going to have, there's going to be a lot of experiences. We're going to kind of be in the middle, and there's going to be a few on the sides that are either really good or really bad. So don't expect your whole life to be like an Instagram reel. There are going to be some really rough moments. And I think people aren't expecting that, or they're not ready for it sometimes. And there's going to be some bad moments, like you're going to lose a loved one, or you're going to have a relationship breakup or something like that. And so understanding that is just part of life, and you will be fine. You can get through it. And there are things to be taken from it that are good. I always kind of try and keep that in mind. And I think have people around you that you love, and spend time with them and prioritize them, and always have something to look forward to, even if it's a silly adventure race or a night out with your mates. Like, just have something you can look forward to. Yeah, and otherwise you lose hope, right? And you just days
become weeks.
Become
yeah,
one.
Exactly.
And,
That's it. What was your proudest moment that you had while being in the SAS?
Yeah.
Probably my proudest moment was, and there was probably two of them. One was getting out of that. Then the one I mentioned where one of my team leaders was killed was getting everyone out of that battle at the end of it in one piece. Like, that was kind of the culmination of everything I'd trained for my whole life. And I was, as hard as it was to lose someone, I was also proud that we had gotten out of it together as a team, because we were in that valley for about 12 hours. It was a tough day. So I was really proud of that. And then probably another time I was really proud is when I was really scared to go back into combat, because I thought, someone's going to get killed or I'm going to get killed. And despite that fear and that dry mouth and the thumping heart rate, I still went. Yeah.
That just shows so much courage.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't even.
It literally is unfathomable.
Like, I think of like long days, and I'm like, dang, that was hard.
And not, like, that's it. Like, Mark, do you ever get offended when people are kind of talking to you about a rough day? They're like, my life is shit because of, something that to you would be so minute. Do you ever get pissed off at that? Like,
no, because I do it too. I'll be like, I spilled something in the car, and
Hello?
ran over the chicken, and there'll be things will go wrong, and I'll be like, hang on a sec, you've still got all your limbs, and no one's trying to kill you, so it's a good day.
Well, I guess that is like, that's a reality check, sometimes that we all could do with. We all could do with a bit of a, is the situation.
Definitely, and I know you touched on the last one, like Band-Aid it, but like, yes, it's bad, but it it could be worse. Let's keep going to push through.
And Australia is uniquely positioned, unlike any other country. We're wealthy, we're very safe. We have pretty low levels of poverty, pretty low levels of crime. We're a free country. Not many countries are like that. I've lived in a lot of places, and some are in really, really bad shape. And we have it probably better than all of them. And sometimes I think people forget that. We really do have it good here.
It is. It's such an amazing, and honestly, thank you for sharing that, because we all need that little check-in and go, you know what, we actually are so, although, we might be in a situation at the moment that, some people are in lockdown, some people are going through something really hard. It is amazing to see we get to breathe really clean air, and we get to drink really clean water and
we
things
have
like
no
that.
No one knocking on our door trying to intrude, you know what I mean? Like intrude or anything like that.
That's it.
Amazing.
We are going to jump into some audience questions. This is kind of going to make everything all soft and smushy, but because you are a man of literally, you've done everything. There's nothing. What's the proudest moment of your life from where you were born to now? What's the standout proudest moment of your life? I want to know.
Definitely the birth of my son. I think.
Yeah.
I think having a kid, it's a really proud moment. I think that once I had that little person, I'm like, oh, now I have. It's not just me. I now have someone I can help and grow and teach, and they rely entirely on you. So that, for me, that was a really proud moment, and I was really proud of Sammy, my wife, for how she handled it, and she's such a great mum as well. So that's, of all the stuff I've done, that's the proudest thing for me.
So cool.
Oh my God, it gives me goosebumps. It's so amazing. Another audience question, which I really thought was interesting, is what was your physical training like just before you went into a mission? Like, what's the training looking like?
Yeah, I think that changed a lot over the years. I think military training was pretty not that sophisticated in the 80s and 90s. And I think by But it was like weights and running, chest and guns and go for a run. And then it kind of got more functional focus. So
I want to do that.
Can you
Not
make?
there's
Is
anything
there a
wrong with that.
T-shirt? Did you make a T-shirt or something?
Yes.
Can you get merch made up, Mark? That is like that.
Chest and guns go for a run.
chest
Just
and
bench
guns.
press
That's all
an
you need.
AK-47.
But yeah, that was it. That was the extent of the training, really. And then I think it got a bit more sophisticated in the 2000s. I mean, we started looking more at functional fitness. So Jim Jones, CrossFit, like all those kind of more functional training sessions came into it. And I started doing CrossFit just randomly with my mate in about 2007. And I noticed that gave me a more rounded capacity than I had before. So that's kind of the training I was doing. But everyone kind of does different things. Some guys do martial arts, some do a bit of CrossFit, some do a lot of endurance. I think it's more about shoring up your weaknesses and keeping your strengths nice and high.
Wow, what a man. Well, like, Mark, can you please tell us where can we buy your book?
Yeah. So you can buy it at all major bookstores. It's funnily enough, Amazon and is probably the cheapest. Amazon and Booktopia for e-commerce. And if you want any of those links, it's also on my site at markwales.com.au.
Beautiful. And Mark, where can we find you on Instagram again? Hit us up.
Oh, Instagram is mark.a.wales. And come on down and say
Come
hello.
on down.
Come on down. I'm super excited for this. We're going to
Yes,
jump straight in. If you
All right.
had a superpower, what would it be?
Or interplanetary travel. I'm a mad nerd, so I just want to be able to travel the
I wouldn't have
stars.
thought that. I would have gone straight for like.
Sorry, can you run me through what that actually... Oh, it means going to the stars?
He's Superman. He's like literally just
Just-
poofing to any
Go anywhere.
universal.
Go anywhere.
I like that. I really like that. And that actually ties in with our next question, which is when we are able to travel again, where is the first destination you are going?
Perth. Home.
Yes.
So my man's going
Yep.
interplanetary in Perth.
Straight back
is the next
home.
And Perth.
destination. I love it.
Via
Via
Perth.
Perth. I like it. What's your you're running and gunning. What's your pre-workout? Food, sauce, drink.
I like a good shake, protein powder, berries, and a bit of oats, bit of water.
Quick carbs,
That's it.
fast carbs.
Yeah. Nice and simple.
Straight
fast
down,
carbs. Yep.
and then I
Vortex.
can go and deadlift as
Drink
like
that
probably
stuff.
300
Yep.
kilos. I'd hate to think what you can deadlift, Mark.
Big.
Back in the day, a few kilos,
A
but
few kilos. Couple of
Few-
biscuits.
A bit less
Couple
now.
of biscuits on the side.
One or
yeah.
two, that's about it. Okay, so who's someone that you look up to, Mark?
I look up to people that are in fields that take a lot of courage to be in, whether it's, some people have philanthropy bents. Some people, for example, will speak out against, oppression of gender or oppression of kids. I actually really respect it because they cop a lot of flack in the process. And I don't have a specific name, but people that have a cause they believe in and are willing to risk their own neck for it, that to me has always been really inspiring because I look at that and go like, I could do a Instagram hashtag, or I could be like this person that actually really puts their neck, on the line to try and support a
Yeah,
cause.
happy to risk it. Like happy to risk their
And not
reputation,
to be ashamed,
kind of.
not to be ashamed for what
Yep.
you believe in and just go with the norm. Yeah. I'll rate
Yep.
that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What's one thing you can't live without?
I have to say coffee. It's a great love of mine. I love a bit of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
agree.
I love that it's like not your wife, not your son. You're like coffee straight up. Nah. That is it. That's amazing. Don't worry, I know you weren't going there because that's non-negotiable, right?
Yeah, they're with me getting coffee.
Yeah.
Mark, if you could describe yourself in one word, what is it?
Determined. I think you got to be a bit determined to do that stuff. So yeah,
I love
that's
it.
probably the
You
one.
honestly have inspired me so much.
I thought he was going to say handsome, but yeah.
That's your word.
Humble.
Humble. Yeah.
Mark, thank you honestly again for joining us for another episode. We can't thank you enough, and we hope that the listeners listening out there get one thing from you. And honestly, the biggest thing that I've taken away from you is to, stick to your guns, to go after what you believe. And I just honestly, thank you so much for coming on.
I'm going to continue to be uncomfortable, like you said, continuously uncomfortable, put myself in situations. So thank you so much, Mark. Absolute legend.
You're amazing.
Thanks for having me. Reach out anytime. You can find me anywhere, so just come and say hello and ask me anything. So thanks a lot for having me.
Google him, and he is first thing that comes up. Mark Wales, let's go. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome.
See you, man.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I really enjoyed talking to Mark.
That was an absolute hoot, and I just feel like so many of us can take away so many tiny little gold nuggets from that episode.
Definitely. Feel free to like, subscribe, and even if you would like to leave a review, very helpful.
Yeah, we would love that. We have plenty more where that came from, so please make sure that you tune in to next week's episode. Bye-bye.
Catch you later.